Must be my favorite folks of all time. Right? I am positioning myself here. How are you all doing? Good morning. I like to start off each day talking about the weather because I find the weather is that one commonality that we don't have a lot of control over. Have you noticed that? I'm moisturizing my hands with something I got at Victoria's Secret. It's supposed to be coconut oil infused, right? Well, yeah. So it has a lot of fragrance in it. It's very oily. So I don't know that it's penetrative. I've been using it for a few days now. So I don't know that it is doing the job of keeping my hands from feeling uh, dry. But it smells nice if you want to do it, I guess. But it's Tuesday morning, and it's going to be a terrific Tuesday. Let me start by saying today is going to be one of those shows that let me just preface it by saying it's still going to be a terrific Tuesday. We're good. We have a lot to talk about, and I would appreciate you chiming in and sharing your comments with me, and so on. We're going to talk about suicide because there has been a rash of suicides in the last couple of days that has captured our consciousness, and I couldn't help this morning when I rolled over and turned the TV on and there it was right in front of me, like kind of, are you going to deal with this or not? So I listened to it to see if, intuitively if that's what, this conversation should be, because obviously I had something else that I wanted to talk about. But time is of the essence, and these things weigh heavily on you. It weighed heavily on me this morning. It shook me for a minute because it makes me confront the fact that we have to talk about crime survivors and we have to talk about trauma, right? And we have to talk about the people whom we love and how important it is for us to stay in touch with people. If you know someone is struggling, then we need to stay in touch. So we're going to talk about that this morning and put it into context and so on. So do you like my ring? Right? I've had it for a few years now. It's a little chipped. It's kind of like a rose. And so my oldest daughter, her middle name is Rose. So when I bought this ring, it was a fight. That's how come it got chipped, because she felt that because her name is Rose, the ring belongs to her. My youngest daughter is she has a more relaxed approach to me and my stuff, right? She doesn't violently take them. My oldest daughter, I hope she's not watching, but don't tell her, Alexandra, she should be in class. So we hope she's not watching. But my youngest daughter, she has a little bit more of a relaxed approach, doesn't she? Don't you think? She's kind of more like, well, mommy, it's there. If I want it, I'm going to get it anyway. And you're good. She's the one who, my youngest daughter just walks into the closet and she says, where is my stuff? That's what she says. Or she'll say, where's my jacket? And I'll be like, I'm pretty sure your jacket is in your closet. But she doesn't do that. She says, the one that we share this. And then she just takes it. So she's a little bit more relaxed. She'll just say, I need it to wear today. And then she looks straight in my eyes, like dead on. And she says, I need to wear this. And then she takes it. And then all of a sudden you just find my hands just become like water. I can't do anything. I can't say anything. I can't stop her. She just takes it. My oldest daughter now, we might be having an issue because she's different. She waits until I'm not at home. And then she goes through my stuff. So it's kind of like, so you know how I wear sunglasses all year long. So the one thing they don't take are my sunglasses. You know why? I buy the sunglasses they don't like. They like the Cartier looking, funny looking stuff. I don't. I like my sunglasses blinged out. So when I discovered that they don't like them, I went to the store. I bought every blinged out one of them I could find. Every one of them. Why? Because they don't like them. So chances are I'll have them. But when it comes to clothes, I don't have such luck. Like this dress, the dress I wore yesterday, my oldest daughter saw it, and she's like, hmm, hmm, nice, huh? And I was like, nah, not so nice. And she's like, you don't know what plans I have for that dress. It's amazing, isn't it? And so I asked men, do your sons do that to you? And yes, your sons go into your closet and they take your ties and your shirts and your joggers and your gym shoes and they just take your stuff just the same. Same thing here. Same thing. Right? So I have learned to become just as aggressive. So they go to the store and they buy stuff. I'm like, I'm taking that. That's mine. It doesn't usually work though. They still grab it back. So whatever. Like I'm carrying I like tote bags because as you know, I carry the whole world and my mama in my tote bag, literally. But the reason I carry a tote bag is because it's easy to go in and take stuff out. So Victoria's Secret has this whole line of tote bags that I love because they're canvas, so they're washable, so you can clean them, and they're nice. I like them. I really do. They're convenient. So I swing in and out of my car as many times as I go in a vehicle all day, and as many places that I go, I want to reach in and take my stuff out. So, so my oldest daughter had bought this one, and she gave it to her sister. Well, that was kind of a wrong thing to do. Mommy took it over. Well, she wasn't really carrying it all the time. So I took it over. Then I went to Victoria's Secret and I saw that they had them. So I might have, yeah, I might have, it was a bad day. I probably was surviving some trauma. So I kind of got myself a few. I got a pink, a black. I got one that says dream. I got one that says something else and something else, and it just kept going and going. Am I saying it quietly? Yeah, because I probably should not say it. I even have one hidden. Yes, the prettiest one is hidden. They can't figure out where it is. Dudes and dudettes, I got a stash of stuff hidden. They can't figure it out. They don't know where it is. They just see mommy showing up every now and then and something, and they're like, "Where'd you get that from?" Nowhere. I bought it when you weren't looking. No, I probably bought it from 2 years ago, but I had it hidden so they can't find it. So laugh with me as I laugh at myself at the fact that my children continue to take my stuff. They find it funny, I guess. And they're like, well, we take it. That means it's cute, right? And I'm like, excuse me. So are you trying to say that I shouldn't wear cute stuff? No, we just find your stuff abnormally cute. So I'm like, whatever. So like this planner, this is my planner, right? So this is my everyday planner. As you can see, it's my planner. Well, when I brought it home, my oldest daughter, Alexandra, was like, where did you get that? And I'm like, it was the only one left. And she was like, so it's mine? And I'm like, heck no. They use their phones. I put appointments in my phone, appointments, right? But if I have to make a phone call, I put it in my phone, but I attach notes to it. Well, what happened is sometimes it's not when the appointment shows up, it's not always there that I want. So I'm a big believer in writing the vision out. So I grab my planner and I write out what I'm going to do the next day. If I'm going to a meeting, what my goal is for the meeting. If I have to make a phone call, why am I calling and what my goal is. So I'm calling because Tom, this, that. So she thought she should have it. I'm like, no, baby, not because it is, doesn't mean, right? So I know we all have stories about our children and how they continue to take from us. And in the words of my two daughters, this is what they say: "What is yours is ours, and what is ours is ours." so what, so what is mine is theirs, but what is theirs remains theirs. That's kind of not fair. Nah, not at all. So I can't wait to get married. So I'm going to tell my husband the same thing. What is yours is mine, and what is mine is mine. I don't know how he's going to deal with that. I can't imagine the look on his face when I say that, but it is what it is. So today is Tuesday, and we have a lot to talk about. I want to share some things with you and ask you to help us do me a favor in a few. So I'm going to tell you some facts. So as you're aware, we have a problem with mass shootings in the country, right? And the problem with that is that it robs us as a society of productive people. It robs us as a society of people who most likely will have a positive contribution to make to our economy and our society. Would we agree? Yes, I think we would agree with that. And so mass shootings are happening more and more In fact, it has become so normal. In fact, America has perhaps set the stage for mass shootings. Isn't that true? We perhaps have taught the world how to react when a mass shooting happens and so on. What we have not been good at is teaching the world how to treat trauma survivors. Now, let me explain this. When a mass shooting happens, when something catastrophic happens, it is trauma. In the past, we have failed to embrace trauma, and we have perhaps chosen to look at trauma as only something that is experienced by soldiers returning home, or perhaps by people who were in a catastrophic weather event. It's just in recent times that we've begun to expand our understanding of trauma to include all of this. But what we were reluctant to embrace is the fact that crime survivors, persons who were on the scene, persons who were affected by crime, the family members of people affected by crime, are people who are trauma survivors. They've been exposed to grave trauma and consequently now have issues, right? I'm going to outline for you some types of trauma that is common. We are blessed that we have never been exposed to a traumatic event such as a mass shooting. Like you've never been anywhere where shots were ringing out in a public place and people were scrambling and then there were people who lost their lives. But if you've ever experienced divorce, that's a form of trauma because it causes separation and detachment. And then there's the change of life and the chaos that ensues from divorce is a form of trauma. And if we learn to embrace this, we're going to accept it and seek help. So many of us refuse to seek help, and we're walking around broken bodies, broken spirits, broken spirited, broken emotionally, and we don't get help. So we have the baggage and the trauma that ensues, the survival of the trauma. So you're getting divorced. Let me outline it for you. You're getting divorced or you've got divorced. Now you are detached from someone you were attached to, the family members, the friends, the whole community that was part of that marriage. That marital situation is now severed. Okay? You don't have that same home anymore. Or if you still live in the same house, it's not the same people in the house. It's not the same atmosphere. It's not the same situation. That's trauma, right? Divorce is a forced trauma. This is why if we start talking about it from that perspective, guess what? People will divorce less. So the stupid things, have you been in a divorce court session lately? Anybody in the last 10, 15 years? The stupid reasons why people get divorced, you will realize after a while, it's not even worth the paper it's written on. And it's not worth what it takes you through. And then 2 years later, you run into each other and then you're looking at each other like, my God, we could have done better. We didn't have to get so egotistic and so angry and allowed societal forces to impact you. And you start looking for unrealistic expectations from your spouses, from our spouses, and then we're gone, right? So divorce is a form of trauma. Job loss is trauma. Let's just be clear. When people lose their jobs today, people are going to be faced with trauma because it's displacement. Just like divorce, it's dislocation. It's displacement from something you're attached to. Maybe for some people, their work family were their only social connections. Now you don't have anything in common. You're not going to hang out. You have different schedules, different times, and you don't have anything in common. You don't have anything but work to talk about, so you're disconnected. Then, of course, there's the financial loss that ensues from divorce and from job loss that perpetuates trauma. Let's just be clear, right? Then, of course, there's death of a family member. So your parents or a child, God forbid, or your spouse or a close friend, someone you grew up with. That is a form of trauma. And the displacement that causes is unbelievable. Now, imagine a child who loses a parent, whether it's one parent or both parents, or it was a car crash that took out both parents, or so on. That child has trauma for the rest of her life, his or her life. One of the first persons I interacted with, one of the first women whom I interacted with and provided services to, was someone who had lost both parents before she turned 18. She was like on the brink of turning 18, and both parents were killed in a car crash, right? They were in one car. So they gave her the other car that she was trying to hold on to. Well, the displacement was the parents didn't leave the house to her. She didn't have the right information to go to probate court and get it. She was underage. No one was taking care of her. She ended up being displaced and being dislocated, and ended up with a guy who she had a baby with. And then he put her out. He kicked her out because he beat her up, and she called the cops, and she didn't know what else to do. You see how it happened? One thing led to another. So a violence, one event, one disruptive event, the death of the parents, caused the other series of disruptive events where she ended up being homeless. She and her daughter, her young child, they almost took the child away from her while the child was in school. And she ended up with another friend who she was staying with, and then the friend lost her job, and then it was just chaos afterwards. So when our lives intersected, when I was at the park on a sunny day, I had just lost my full-time job, and I was at the park saying, well, what do people do? I'm just like sitting there. And then I saw them, and their car couldn't start. And something moved over me. The Spirit of the Lord moved over me. That's all I can say. And I went over to them and I said, how can I help? Because I knew they needed help. I knew right away that they needed help. So somebody was using a smaller car to, try to jumpstart it, and it was working. I said, my engine can do it. Right? So we got when somebody else came and they connected the wires to it and started, and I said, this seems like there's a bigger, I looked in the car and I could tell they were living out of their car because there were clothes in there, and there were, like wrappers, food wrappers and stuff like that. And I knew right away that they were living. I said, there's a bigger problem here. Let me help. And they wouldn't tell me because they thought, I said, don't think I'm not going to do anything. I'm not interested in calling the authorities. Tell me what your problem is and let me help you. And that's when they started telling me. And by the end of the day, I took them to O'Reilly's, got them a new battery. And then I went and got, so they needed a battery for the car. So I paid for a battery, right? And then I got them into a shelter so that they could find somewhere to be. Right? I stayed in touch with them for about 4 months, and then they stopped calling. They stopped answering the phone. But by that time, they were in the shelter. They were getting a job. They were getting job training, that kind of stuff, something to jumpstart because they were seriously at risk. And I explained to them what the risks were. They had a small child. She had a small child. They were both under 26, which meant they were prime age for trafficking, right? And they were at the prime point where anybody could say anything and they would jump at it, and then they would disappear into trafficking forever. So I felt like this was an intervention that needed to happen. But what caused it was this chaotic event that disrupted their lives, the disruption. So that's what trauma does. Trauma brings what? Disruption. Have you ever seen the scene and the footage from a mass shooting? All you see is chaos. What that is disruption. That disruption disrupts everybody's way of thinking, disrupts your sense of security, right? And so people fall into a pattern of behavior. They're worried, they can't keep still. People develop phobias. Some people who have been in a classroom where violence erupted or in a room where violence erupted suddenly have a phobia of being indoors. They have a phobia of being in a confined space. People have phobias about people getting violent because they know that when people start acting out, something else is likely to happen, right? And then, of course, there is trauma from mass shootings. That's the worst type, right? And don't think that you are not being traumatized. You and I are traumatized. Every time you see it as an alert, every time you watch it on TV, it's reinforcing our sense or lack of security. It's telling us that you're not safe anywhere. We're all responding to it. Here's how you know you've been affected by these traumatic mass shootings that are traumatic in nature. You refuse to go to the movie theater. You find that you don't always want to go. You don't like going to the mall. You have a heightened sense of awareness. You keep looking around and you're staring at people to identify who is a possible mass shooter. That's trauma. We're responding to trauma. It might be at the initial stages. It might not be so disruptive. that it may make you take your own life, but it is enough for you to pay attention to. Do you see where I'm coming from? And so we are still responding to it. This is why, in a way, the media is doing it because they want ratings. They want eyeballs to it, because then they go to advertisers and say, over 1 million people watched our segment on blah, blah, blah. So advertise here. Put your advertising dollars here. But at the same time, so they're irresponsible in a way because they're not thinking of the long-term effects of trauma. Well, what about the trauma associated with loss? That you have lost someone significant to you, whoever that person was, whatever their role was in your life, that person was significant. Sometimes it's not necessarily a biological connection, sometimes it's a friend, right? There is trauma associated with it, right? And you have to understand it, and we need to grasp it and wrap our minds around it so it can affect our behavior, right? When Robin Williams committed suicide, there is a reason they did not release the photos, because it was traumatic to look at, right? And it would have played out in our minds, destroyed our image of who he was. He was this laughable character, always bringing humor to situations. It would have destroyed that image, right? They weren't concerned about the image being destroyed because of its effect on us. They were concerned more about the image being destroyed because his estate was likely to make a lot of money from people watching his films over and over. So again, they were motivated by the Benjamins, right? Which is exactly what I want to talk about too, because the Benjamins and our pursuit of money, the money culture, is so pervasive and so strong. It influences every aspect of our lives. And don't tell me money is bad. I don't believe money is bad, but I believe that we need to curtail some activities. The reason that there are so many mass shootings is because of the availability of guns. We all accept that, right? And yes, the First Amendment exists. Everybody has the right to bear arms. I don't have a problem with it. I just feel like there should be legislation to control what kind of arms we're going to bear. In Canada, you need a license to get a hunting rifle. That's the only license they let you have, gun license they let you have. Why can't we do something similar here? Why are we allowing AR-15, a weapon that the military does not even use anymore, because it's so destructive and disruptive and chaotic in situations where it's used? After the Parkland shooting, I have been wondering for years why emergency room doctors are so quiet about shootings when people go into an emergency room and their bodies are torn up from gunshots. I've been wondering for years, why won't they talk about it? I could never get a doctor to talk about it on camera because it's money. At the end of the day, that doctor needs to be paid. He's part of a hospital system, part of an HMO. If he says anything, he knows where his money is coming from. He probably won't have patients, probably won't have a practice, right? So they don't talk much. But after the Parkland shooting, emergency room doctors started to speak out. And I'm going to post the article because I saved it. This was from last year, right? We're approaching the 1 year anniversary. And when they describe what happens to the body when a bullet from an AR-15 hits you, hits the mass of your body, so the torso, it's over, right? So they spoke out, but as far as I'm concerned, they're not vocal enough. They're not making waves. They're not saying stuff. So people still don't know, and there is not enough pressure being put on legislators. So the legislators are influenced by the gun lobby, who have big money driving this, right? So nobody is going to upset that because politicians want to maintain their presence and their positions of power. Okay? Right? News anchors not going to say anything because they want to stay in front of you all day and they want to make money as long as they can, right? We agree. Okay. So who is it left up to? Say it. Me and you, right? You and I. It's up to us. Okay? All right. So, but here is where it becomes personal. It becomes personal when it is your family member on the line who has lost their lives. Now, two young ladies who survived the Parkland shooting at Marjorie Stoneman School in Parkland, Florida, two of them took their lives within 7 days of each other. I think it was exactly 6 days apart, right? two students, one of whom was not in the building where people were being shot, but she was on campus that day, and her best friend was killed. The other one, they just don't want to talk about it. So, two people who are survivors of trauma took their lives. I think those young people are heroes because they took their own lives so the rest of us and the politicians and the legislators would get up and rise up and do something. They're showing us that, okay, so you don't want to do anything. Well, we're all going to kill ourselves because we're going to die anyway. Because if they go to college, one of whom had actually gone to college, but she had exhibited such trauma because of the trauma. She was paranoid about being in a building, paranoid about being in a space where there were other people, just paranoid. She chose not to live anymore. Now, were there warning signs? Yes. From what I've read, there were warning signs. Yes. But how much can you prevent someone from hurting themselves when someone has determined that their best way out is to hurt themselves? Do you see where I'm coming from? Why did this happen to her? She was a victim. She didn't go pick up a gun and go shoot people up. She didn't go buy a gun online and shoot people up. No. What she did was live her life as a normal teenager on her way to college so she could graduate college and be a person. That's all she did. What did the other teenager do? Nothing but be born a teen, but be born. That's all. Now, when you look at the father, the third scenario I want to point out is the father of the Sandy Hook survivor. He's a survivor. His daughter was 6 years old when she was killed at Sandy Hook. Remember that killing that took out 26 children 6 years ago? 6 years ago, people. Right? It was like December of 2013. Remember that one? Right? Well, that man killed himself. He had started a foundation to help. He's a neuroscientist. I want you to look at this in perspective, that this can affect anybody, anywhere, at any time. This has nothing to do with money. This has nothing to do with class. This has nothing to do with anything but being human. This man, and if you think people in the inner city don't commit suicide, yeah, every time they pick up a blunt, every time they pick up crack, what do you think they're doing? They're slowly killing themselves. They just don't get media coverage. But it happens anyhow, right? This man started a foundation to examine and to understand, why does the brain tell people to do abnormal behaviors? He was studying abnormal behaviors. He felt that the brain was the key, the workings of the inner mind, the workings of the mind were key to understanding what would promote someone, what would push someone to go take up a gun and kill everybody off. That's what his foundation was studying. That's what he spent his last 6 years doing. He still took his own life because he probably felt there was no hope. What brings people to this point? The trauma. They can't get it out of your minds. Do you know what it's like to show up at the scene? Have you ever been in a violent situation? Let me ask you that. Have you ever have you ever had to show up at the scene where someone you know was hurt, whether it was a domestic violence situation or an accident, a car accident, car crash, something happened to a building? Have you ever had that experience? Well, you are having what is called dissociative trauma. In this man's case, although his child died, he was having a serious case of dissociative trauma, but it became personal because that was his 6-year-old child. As a parent, you blame yourself. Why did I send her to school that day? You'll never stop asking yourself, why didn't I see this coming? Why did I send her to school? Why did I choose this community to live in? Why did I choose that school? Do you see the never-ending questions of why? I used to tell my children that why has a long tail and it ends in a V, because they would forever ask why. In these scenarios, the whys never have an answer. I think we need to come to that place that the traditional ways of treating folks in trauma do not work today. We need to accept that, because when people come to you and ask you, why did my parent die? Why did my husband have to die? Why did my wife die? Why did my child die? There is no answer you can give that is ever going to satisfy that. There is no answer to explain loss. There's no answer for the survivor to feel comfortable and to feel that okay, I can walk away feeling as if I'm just supposed to act like this is normal, especially in mass shootings. Now, if you have a relative who was sick and died, then there is some level of acceptance that the person, the survivors, will arrive at later, right? If they were in a car accident or something like that. But when it comes to mass shootings, in an age when our legislators and our politicians refuse to tackle the issue and refuse to enact legislation that will prevent certain types of assault weapons from being used by the public on the public, people are going to think there is no hope. Now, check this out. This man is a neuroscientist. As far as he's concerned, he's supposed to have all the answers. He's wealthy, he's privileged, right? He's white, he's male, and yet he couldn't protect his own child from being the victim of a mass shooting in her school. Can you imagine how he feels? He felt helpless, right? He felt totally helpless, right? The loss of that person's presence. Why did my 6-year-old have to die? Why was it me? Of all the children in the world, dear God, why did my child have to die? There is no hope. There is no God. There's no Jesus. There's no love. There's no hope. There's no faith. There's no peace. This is what trauma does. And what is happening to all of us is, guess what? The constant barrage of stuff that has gone wrong has now convinced all of us that there is really no hope. There's nothing good. There is no God. And so people are just like, there's no hope. Why bother? Yesterday, this is how this started to weigh on me, because yesterday I was on Instagram and I was reading the story of Big Sean. Everybody knows Big Sean, right? I think he sings R&B or is rap. I don't know. Look what I know. R&B or hip hop. I don't know, right? But Big Sean is a Detroit native who has made it, right? And here in town, he's well liked. He's very, very, very well liked. Well, he gave an interview in which he confessed that he has had problems with depression in the last year, and that he had sunk so low he didn't even talk to his mother because he started blaming the relation. He said there were a lot of toxic people and a lot of toxic relationships, and his traditional ways of responding to that were not working. He said music used to be his escape, working out and all that kind of stuff was his escape, and those things weren't working. That's when he had to go get a therapist. And the therapist told him, get rid of the toxic people. Does that sound hey, y'all, does that sound familiar? Do I tell you all the time, get rid of negative people, get rid of naysayers, get rid of them, right? So he started looking at relationships around him that he thought were toxic. Even his mother was one of them. And I was surprised because he used to sing about his mother being one of his anchors. You know what that tells me? That's somebody whom you need to watch, because he no longer has the clarity of mind to be able to identify correctly who is toxic and who is not. If somebody is part of your support system, you need to examine them for real. And this is what I talk about all the time, that we all need to have what? A support system. Identify people. Folks, stop letting work and this take away from you being in touch with the people in your lives, the people who are meaningful and people who are good. Identify them and stay in touch. Because trust me, trauma is real. And when life-changing events happen, the loss of a spouse, the loss of a job, divorce, separation, you have to move from your house because you lost your job, or you're going to retire and you can't, on your retirement income, you can't maintain your standard of living, and now you have to change it. That is a form of trauma. Good morning. Is it any wonder why a lot of seniors, have you noticed that? Have you guys really noticed that? It's just that seniors just cope with it different. They don't kill themselves because it's not part of how they grew up. And I'm afraid we're setting a dangerous trend for this generation, because we're telling them when life overwhelms you and you can't cope, kill yourself. Seniors don't kill themselves as frequently because it's not part of their culture to do. But have you noticed that a lot of seniors are in depression? Heck yes. When you were working, you used to earn this much so you could live this way. Now you have to spend most of your money on medication You don't have enough money to buy food. You know how this thing hit me? A few months ago, I think it was the period between Thanksgiving and Christmas. You know how that is. It's the holiday, so you're shopping more, right? Because you're buying more food because we're all eating too much. Oh, right? And I was at the store, the grocery store, and I go to the grocery store at a certain time of the day. So when I go, apparently that's when a lot of seniors go, right? And I was looking, whenever I'm at the grocery store, I must confess, I look in people's grocery carts. I like to see what people are eating, right? Well, when you look in my cart, you'll see a lot of stuff. But when I looked in people's carts, and I noticed, I began to become aware that, wait a minute, these are mostly seniors. But the stuff they were putting in their carts were like stuff in cans. So I began to take note of that and I said, well, why? Well, they're older, so they may not be cooking as much, right? Life might have changed, so they may be single due to loss of a spouse or divorce, and they never remarried, so now they're old. Sickness, they can't move around, they have mobility restrictions now, so they can't stand at the stove and cook, right? They're afraid of cooking because their hands shake. They have memory and retention problems, so they don't want to turn a stove on because they might forget it and then burn the house down and burn themselves down, right? So there are all kinds of inherent problems. So I was, nobody should eat anything from a can. Let's just be clear about that. But if that's all that your meal is constructed of, we have issues. And I looked in their faces and they were hopeless because it's like, why don't I just die? I'm on my way to dying. I might as well just die because there is no hope. I'm turning red just talking about it because I was standing there and I felt like, have we failed people? And I'm like, have we failed people? Have we not? What do we do to our seniors? We're telling people that you're insignificant and irrelevant after a certain age. So people retire. We put people out to parcel, retire them and send them home, right? And then say, oh, your relevance is over and your contribution is over. Goodbye. God bless you. Maybe. And so people are sitting at home and don't have the mobility structures. We don't even have the society that cares anyway. Everybody's all about me and doing what I do, right? And so people are sitting at home. They only go to the doctor. They spend more on prescription because as soon as you go to a doctor in America, he's going to find a problem. He or she's going to find a problem with you. And there you go on medication. So one medication produces another side effect. And before you know it, within 5 years, you're either dead or you're on your way to being dead. Or you're like, well, if you survive it, you're like, well, something's got to change around here. You would be surprised. So check upon a senior. If you have a relative who is a senior, whether it's your great aunt, uncle, whatever, and they have kids who live out of state, you pick up the phone, check on them. You drive over there. Yes, you can. Spend some time with them and check on them. It will help. Go pick them up one day. Drive around with them and take them around so you can see how they live. When mom was intent on being active until she left here, that was her thing, right? Before she died, she did say that the sickness whipped her. That's what it took. It took 3 types of cancers and all kinds of stuff to kill her off. Because she was going to, listen to me, up until, I think it was like up until 2 weeks before they diagnosed her, she was at work. She never retired. She said, and she was 71. She said, I have no intention of retiring. When I do retire, I'm going to Jamaica to go live under a coconut tree, in my house under a coconut tree. That was her thing, right? She kept it up and she was mobile, but it was the cancer that destroyed her joints and her bones. But she intended to live. She said, there's no way that you all are going to parcel me off in a nursing home and put me down in a nursing home. No. But you see where I'm coming from? But mom could say that because mom had a very healthy support system. She had friends and she had children who called. We didn't just call, we were there. Her children showed up, checked on her. In fact, she was the general, so she was always giving orders. Pick me up. Come and get me. I want to go here. I want to go there. That was how she lived. If you have a senior, I want you to check on them. I want you to call them. Yes, I'm asking you because seniors slide into depression. What kind of trauma were they exposed to? They had a lifetime, people. They had a lifetime. They've seen stuff. You realize that over time, all that stuff builds up. And I know you're all saying, Harriet, it's not really like that. Go sit down and talk to a senior. Ask them about their lives. Let them start telling you. It is up to you now to do the analysis, to realize that there might have been some trauma they were exposed to, and they might feel some type of way about it. Let me get a social worker here who can help them. Because if you tell them you need to talk to someone, they're not going to. But if you know their pastor, call the pastor, ask him to go check on them, hold them accountable, right? And if you know a social worker, so their insurance pays for it, calls a therapist, tell them go visit them. Say, hi, how you doing? What you doing today? And then you pick them up. You take them out. Talk to them. I encourage you to do so, because here's the thing. By the end of this show, I'm going to ask you if there's someone whom you think of, someone who might have experienced the loss recently, whatever the form of loss it was, check on that person. Friends, my friends, I want you to check in every day with someone. There are people who are living with indescribable loss. Let us face it, everybody is not on the mountaintop all the time. I am not on the mountaintop all the time. None of us are on the mountaintop all the time. People need different stuff to prop them up and different things to keep them going. Some of us just do it better than others, and some of us still have ways to cope, right? I still have to eat my chocolate. I went to the store and I went and bought my chocolate sundae thingy in the little ice cream cone thingy. Yeah. Well, it's actually a lot less calories than making brownies. So, okay. So you're with me on that, right? I still have to eat chocolate, right? To everybody has stuff, all this stuff that you're bombarded with on the newscast every day, the stuff that happens in our personal lives. Something is up. We've got to learn to take care of one another. This is where the rubber meets the road. We have become such an insular society where it's all about me. We don't call people anymore. We don't check in on people, right? Nobody does that. We don't, oh, we just send them a text. Go check on somebody. Call them and say, hey, man, how you doing? You have a friend who recently got divorced and he's a guy. I don't care if he has 500 women in and out of his bedroom. Check on that Negro. Check on that man, because that man is having issues. In fact, the more women you see coming in and out of there, that's the more it tells you something is wrong, right? Check on him or her. You know a friend who just recently lost a spouse, whether her husband left her for some young thing or he just walked away because he can't be bothered with being married anymore, or he found himself so suddenly he likes other men, whatever the scenario. Yes, these things happen. Call someone and check in on them. You know somebody who lost a child, somebody whose child went off to college, call them, involve them in daytime activities. And this is why I say you have to plan your life out. You can't escape that. I am about to be an empty nester again. My youngest daughter is about to go to college in a year. You think I don't have a plan? Oh, you don't want to see my plans. She asked me the other day what your plans are, because it's coming, Mommy. I'm going to be gone to college and Lexi's going to be gone. So go live your life, Mommy, from now. And look at me rolling my eyes at her like, girl, please. You thought I wasn't living my life when you got here? How did you think you got here? That always freaks them out. That always freaks them out when I'm like, look at you. I said, how do you think you got here? Right? Plan your lives out, right? What happens after you retire? You've spent 20 years working for a company. They're about to parcel you out. What are you going to do? Don't sit there and wait for the hammer to drop. Plan your life out, because when you retire, what's going to happen? You're going to miss the routine. You're going to miss the connections, right? You don't realize it, but you do. You're going to miss the identification that job provided. So plan your life out. If you're working somewhere and you think you are safe, well, I don't know which job in America is safe today. Nobody has a safe job. So that's a delusion. So have a plan. What if I'm not working here? What would happen? Right? Have a plan. Me, I'm full of plans. In fact, I dare say that it's the plans that have kept me going in spite of calamity. When my mother died, that was a calamitous thing that happened. It's a good thing I had a plan or plans that helped me to navigate and walk through those waters. I went to therapy. They actually told me that I was never going to get over my mother's death. Can you believe that? That's what the therapist said. I looked at her like, girl, you're crazy. I said, you're crazy. I said, you do realize the cycle of life is that parents die before. And she said, yes. I said, what modality are you looking at? You're looking at some modality that says that. I said, girl, you're crazy. You're talking to the wrong one. Is that what you tell everybody walking through here? No wonder people are offing themselves. And I got up and walked out because I was like, that was the wrong thing. She did call me after that. I said, what are you calling me for? To check on me? I said, you're nuts. I am feeling lost. Of course it's going to hurt. But don't tell people that you're never going to. No. My friends, there are some things in life, to be honest with you, there is no such thing as ever getting over a loss of death, such as a parent or a child or a spouse. You know what happens? You learn to live with it. You come to grips and you come to this place where the rubber meets the road. I call it your come to Jesus moment, where you accept that it was going to happen. It happened because it was predestined to happen. And it happened, and I have to live. While you yet live, have life. And so this morning, today, right? Check in on someone. You know there's somebody in your circle, someone you know. Check in on someone, call them. Make time to check in on people. Make time to call folks, make time to talk to folks, make time to surround people. People need to feel needed and loved. People need to feel as if they're valued. In our society today, we do not do that. We discredit people. We throw people away. I'm not talking about the toxic people and the negative people. I'm not talking about them. Get rid of them. Just like Big Sean said he had to get rid of a lot of toxic relationships from when he was growing up. Yes, because he has evolved. And some of those toxic relationships continue to pull you down into a mindset and a way of thinking that does not help you. Get rid of them. But I'm talking about we do not value people. We dismiss people, discredit people, discharge people, right? And we don't see people for who they really are. Someone is hurting right now. There are many people who are hurting. People are hurting. People are without jobs. People don't have jobs. They don't have dignity. They can't provide for their families. That, my friends, is depression. Depression leads to suicide in today's world. Let us face it. The traditional ways of coping with depression, all the chemicals they give us. You go to the doctor and you're not coping. The first thing they want to do is write you a prescription. Those pills unbalance your hormones. So you're up, then you need to take the pill to level you off. Then sometimes the pill makes you unbalanced. Then it fights to level you up because it's working with the chemicals that our bodies are built with and are made with. Let us just accept there are some things that we never understand. I will never understand why people die. I understand life and death within the context of you're born, we're organic, the body's going to break down and it's going to pass away. But the loss of the individual to that community, I cannot get. So if you can't wrap your mind around it, accept it. And if you can't accept it, that's the problem. Because loss for some people is indescribable. And we can't negate or mitigate what a loss is to someone else. This man in Sandy Hook still lives in the same town, right, where his daughter died. So every day he has to drive past the school where she died, right? And he started a foundation, hopefully to benefit others. So he would leave some research data. He was a neuroscientist. I'm a healer of the spirit. And my spirit got broken when my mother died. My spirit got hit when my 26-year-old cousin died. My spirit took a hit when my father died. In fact, when I look back over it, my spirit got hit from my grandfather died. It's 30 years now when my grandfather died. Do you see what I'm saying? Then my mentor died. And I was blown away. I was just completely like, I had to breathe. Do you see what I'm saying? So there are some things that happen as a matter of course. Death is one of them. I think the situation surrounding it is what causes the trauma. Because in something, one of the young ladies who took her own life We're having this frank discussion because it needs to be frank, right? One of the young ladies who took her own life, her best friend was killed. So she's having survivor guilt that why I wasn't with her. I should have been with her. She probably texted me and she wasn't with her. So she's having survivor guilt plus hopelessness. She went to college, but she's probably like, why am I in college? My friend isn't here. And she's paranoid about being in a situation where someone else could come in and shoot the place up. I don't go to movie theaters for the same reason. After the Aurora shooting in Colorado, I was like, look, we need to take a second look about going to the theater. So when I go to the cinema, this is me. Where are the exits? The first thing I'm looking at, where are the exits? If something were to happen, how do you get from top to bottom? That's why I don't go to concerts, because I'm not buying any nosebleed seats, because if something happens, how am I going to get down there to survive? See what happens? Trauma. The effects of trauma cannot be underscored. This is why there is a policy called the VOCA, right? Victims of Crime Compensation Act. It is designed specifically to compensate victims of crimes. What it wasn't doing for a long time, victims of crime did not have advocates. There were not enough people advocating for the survivors of crime. Even the person who was not victimized, let's say a shooting takes place, like in Parkland, for instance, right? And Sandy Hook, right? The young ladies who died this week were not victims of the shooting, but they're victims nonetheless, because what? They watched it unfold. It affected them. Similarly, the father of the child who was killed, it's 6 years later. We're not doing enough to support victims of crime. Are we seeing that? We're not doing enough to support victims of crime. We're not doing enough to support survivors of mass shootings. We're not doing enough. They are trauma survivors. Anyone who has encountered a trauma requires support forever and a day, because their minds still have to cope with the event that happened. And that's the problem. How does the mind work? How do you wrap yourself? Even when all this scientific data, because this man was a scientist, he was a neuroscientist, all this scientific data was in front of him. He was still what? Human. He still has hormones. He still has feelings. And all the scientific data could not convince him why his 6-year-old daughter was killed. Survivors of trauma. If you have ever been in any kind of event, a train accident, your train got stranded, trauma, you saw someone being beat up, that's dissociative trauma. This is why I don't, when people share videos of people fighting, I'm against it, because you are creating trauma for others. When children are fighting one another and people are videotaping it and putting it up, that's dissociative trauma. Violence, that's why I hate violence in every form. Violence creates trauma. And the survivors of trauma are having difficulties coping day by day. You know, I'm a survivor of significant trauma. Yeah? So I was raped, I was molested when I was 6 years old. An adult had sex with me when I was 6. That's trauma, right? Then my ex-husband beat me up. That's trauma. When I look at the facility stay or taking pills, there's one woman I know who was a victim of human trafficking, who became addicted to drugs and ended up in a mental health treatment facility. And they told her there was no hope. She would never make it back to normal, right? She still copes, other coping mechanisms, right? By the grace of God, go I and you. Okay? And I'm saying for her, the trauma that occurred wreaked such havoc in her life, that she couldn't even take care of her children normally. That created another trauma, because her son ended up in foster care. They took him from her because they said she couldn't take care of him because of the trauma. When she came out of the trafficking, the trauma prevented her from living a normal life. Hello, somebody, right? So the trauma that a person has been exposed to does determine their lifespan. Because she asked me, how did you emerge and you're normal? How did you emerge? And she says, if you didn't say it, I would never have known. I can't believe it happened because you're not exhibiting any signs of it. By the grace of God, go I. For some people, they don't tap into that grace. If you keep tapping into it, you will get it. That's a surety. But some people, they don't believe that it will be effective in helping them to cope. So, in talking to survivors of trafficking who have been exposed to sexual assault and trauma because they're invariably in violent situations, I went to a friend of mine who has had some significant experience. He's been treating children in trauma for over 50 years, right? You can't rob yourself of counsel. You know that, right? And I went to him and I was like, what happened? I asked him, I said, what's going on? And he said, he confessed. He said, you're on the money, Harriet. You're right. He said, the traditional modalities are not working anymore. In fact, just a few weeks ago on the news I was watching, they were talking about a new way of treating people with depression where, you know, that thing Flonase that we spray for allergies? They have found a new antidepressant drug, but instead of ingesting it as a pill, they created it in a spray. And they did one test study, and this guy was off the chain. He said it worked for him. The pills he had been taking for 5 years did not work. But you know what caught my attention? The therapist who was treating him said, let's just be clear. 40 years of taking pills has not helped one jack person overcome depression. And I was like, that man deserves a medal for admitting what we know to be true. Sometimes going to doctors will perhaps not give people the release and the relief that they feel. What, you know what we're really looking for when you've been traumatized? Guess. Take a wild guess. What is it? Tell me. Escape. We're looking for escape. It's a mental escape. We're trying to escape the memory of that traumatic thing that happened. So what I tell folks is create in your mind a safe place. When stuff starts going crazy around you and you feel like you're not going to cope, develop a place in your mind, a memory, or develop some place where you go, whether you imagine yourself at the beach or you imagine a better life than you have had. That's how what I found helps people to cope with trauma. I read a lot. I watch movies. I read a lot, right? I like talking to people. I open up. I talk to people. My daughters say, especially my youngest daughter, Anna, I talk about her a lot. She says that, Mom, you're too transparent sometimes. You just talk. And I said, yeah, but it helps me to cope with stuff. When my mom was sick and dying, if I went to the mall, I started telling everybody, oh, my mom is sick. And you'd be surprised the outpouring of support. And people would make suggestions. They would say, oh, I'm sorry. That happened to me. That happened to my friend's mom. That happened to my in-laws. You know what I mean? And people were just so open. When she died and I started talking, people would just hold my hand. Even people who were different, invariably, they didn't look like me. They were different from me. But everybody has had a similar situation where they've lost a parent. You'd be surprised how many people touch my hand and say, I'm sorry to hear that. I hope it works out for you. People at the checkout counter, people just standing beside each other in the mall, you'd be surprised. Folks, open your mouth and say something. If you feel something, say something. Don't just sit there in the midst of your loss and allow it to envelope you and overcome you. If you feel something, say something. Don't sit there and think, I'm a man, I should keep it together. I don't want anybody to know. Pick up the phone and call somebody. If for nothing else, call the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. If nothing else, at least they're not going to go blab on Facebook that, man, I just talked to John and you would think he has it together, but man, is he just like mouthing off? Is he having a problem? And when people open up and disclose to you, shut your mouth. Stop talking about their business. They need to feel safe. You're not helping them. Shut your mouth. They have just disclosed to you. Ask them if they need help. Keep in touch. If they're threatening to kill themselves, then you call 911. That is a no-no. If someone says, I'm going to kill myself, call 911. Because people invariably will. Right? But if someone calls you and says, man, my wife left me, my husband left me, my son is gone to college, I don't know what I'm going to do. I lost my job, lost my income. The money that I thought I had saved is not enough for retirement. I'm going to lose my house because I couldn't pay the mortgage. I'm going to lose my car because I couldn't do this. Whatever the scenario is, listen and shut up and do what? Be there for them. Check in. Sometimes it's not like you have to write a check to erase 3 months mortgage or 6 months mortgage. By all means, if you can do that, do that. But give the person some sort of a lifeline, would you? Throw them a lifeline. For the life of me, I can never understand why people don't do that. Years ago, I was in a church and this guy was about to lose his job. He was an engineer, one of the big three companies. He was about to lose his job and he went to the pastor and gave the pastor a Corvette and told him to hold the Corvette until he could get the money and give him $15,000 to save his house. He gave him the $15,000, but the pastor asked for the title to the Corvette. So now the man can't come up with the $15,000 because he's lost his job. The pastor now owns the Corvette. The pastor didn't need to own a Corvette. He has millions of vehicles. He has the means to go buy himself whatever he wanted. You know what he turned around and did? He decided to give away the man's Corvette to someone who was undeserving of it. How that guy didn't kill himself, I don't know. Give the Corvette to someone who didn't deserve it because he felt like, well, it was his and he could give it away to someone who couldn't even drive. The woman he was going to give it to couldn't drive, couldn't do anything. Can you believe what I'm saying? Right? Almost hurt that guy because it was unnecessary. Are you feeling what I'm saying, people? Are you just understanding what I'm saying? Right? In other words, what I'm saying is there was no need for him to do that. There was absolutely no need for that. There was no need for him to continue to do something like that. Right? You don't just be compassionate. The person came to you, $15,000 to that pastor is like $1,500. Doesn't mean anything to you. Yes, I can say that. He's a multimillionaire, right? Be compassionate. He didn't have to take the man's Corvette and give it away. He could have said, man, you probably need this more than I do. Just forget it. You've been in my church for a while. You've paid more than that in tithes. Forget it. Do you see? What does it take for us to be compassionate to another human being? What does it take for you to go across the street to a senior living there and check in on them? What does it take? Just ask. What does it take for you to cook a meal for a senior and take it to them? What does it take for the single mother who lives down the street from you to go fix her garage door, fix her lights? What does it take for you to give her a gas card one day? Or say, I was at Home Depot and I saw this and it was on sale. What does it take for us to be nice to people? We're so unkind. We're so unforgiving. We're very unkind, right? We tend to want everything all for ourselves. What does it take? Yes, I'm challenging that pastor. $15,000 was like $1,500. You could have sent someone over the edge. We are so unkind and cruel to people. Sometimes you are someone's lifeline. And we're so unkind. I'm holding my hands up because as much as I'm talking to you, look, if I point this finger at you, how many of them are pointing back at me? All four. So I'm just as guilty as the rest of us, right? How many people need our help? How many people stand in the gap and need our help and we turn our backs on them? Right? People are at their wits' end. Folks, people are at, everybody's not doing well. And even people who exhibit financial success. So maybe for some people, money is not the thing, right? They can pay their bills. They can live. Money is not the thing, but their hearts are broken because some loss occurred. Might not have appeared to be traumatic in the way that it happened, but they experienced a loss that they can't get over. And that loss is affecting them. Here's what happens. In our brains, there is a hormone called serotonin. Serotonin is that thing in us that makes you feel better, right? You know, when you go to the gym and you work out, it's not oxytocin, y'all, the one that we get when we have sex. That's a different one, right? And serotonin is the feel-good hormone that makes you say, oh, I'm going to be okay. Well, our emotions are like a well. It's the best way I can explain it. So every time something happens, you dip into that well to survive. right? Hey, Dr. Simpson, Dr. James is in the house, right? And every time you dip into that well to survive, what happens? You're extracting from it. Are you putting stuff back in your well? No. One day you run out. All the trauma of life. Work is traumatic. You have to deal with all kinds of situations at work, right? Then you have job loss, affects your self-esteem, affects your money. Then you have life loss. You lost children through divorce. Yeah. You don't look at it that way? Of course you did. You lost a routine. You don't live in the same house anymore, so you don't wake up every morning and see your kids. No, so it's a loss. You don't have that stable, supportive environment that was there. You know it was a routine, it was always there. That's why some men who cheat and don't divorce, they feel guilty, extremely guilty. But then they look at it all and they're like, to disrupt my routine, y'all need to go get somebody. And I'm saying that to myself too, right? Go couple up, find the right person and be a part of it. Whatever it takes to work, stay with somebody. You need someone to talk to at the end of the day. You need someone to be there for you. Need to feel that there is someone there for you. And sometimes that loss, that's the thing that causes all this displacement in a relationship. Guess what it is? Is the feeling that you lost someone valuable to you, someone who was there for you. Either you did something to cause it to happen or something else happened, some external force happened, but that person is no longer there and you feel the loss. Get up off your ego and go pick up the phone and call them. Tell them, I'm sorry, and I'm running back to you with everything that is in me. Right? It could be a family member, like a sibling or something. They didn't do anything, but your ego is standing in the way. Pick up the phone. Because at the end of the day, you need a support system. Who is in your support system? Right? You need a support system. You need someone whom you absolutely feel safe with. Sometimes the person you feel the safest with is the person you sleep with the most. The one who is in the bed that you go home and you tell them everything. You ever see some guy out there and he's just running from house to house, from woman to woman, but at the end of the day, he goes home. Why? That's probably the one he feels safe with. He tells that one everything. And we all need to learn to be vulnerable. I know we've had issues with life. That's life. It comes with issues, and you feel like, oh my God, I've been vulnerable, and they took advantage of me. Grow up and get over it. Grow up, get over it, and get on moving. You want to live? This is what it's going to take to live. You are living. This is what it costs to live. Life comes with hits and stuff. We might as well stop watching TV that tells us that life is one series of hunky-dories. One of the best situational stories I have ever watched on television that is so realistic is called Shameless. Anybody has ever watched it? It streams on Netflix. Shameless. It actually is not American in origin. It's based on a British drama, but the American version is what we watch on Netflix. You all should watch it. It's so realistic. It's a very realistic portrayal of life. Why? Because it's about a white guy who is an alcoholic who married some girl and who had a series of children. And she cheated on him and even had one child and brought the child back. Right? And he's an alcoholic. He's constantly giving away the children's money, constantly bringing strangers into their house when he's in his alcoholic haze. It is very realistic. It's not at the end of the episode, everything is hunky-dory and everybody smiles for the camera. No, it shows you what real life is like. You know why there's the disconnect between how you feel and what you see on TV? What you see on TV has to be resolved in 45 minutes. Real life is not like that. So the disconnect happens because you're thinking, my life should look like the folks on TV or the folks on Instagram in the minds of young people, or the folks on YouTube, because they're just constantly having a golden life and living life like it's golden. This is why you're all irresponsible. When you post pictures on Facebook talking about living life like it's golden, stop. You have issues. You just went through a divorce. Somebody just left you. You just lost a job. They even threaten you on the job. And what happens is somebody else going through stuff is looking like, why can't I have that? Why that is never me? It's on economies of scale. It depends on where you are, It depends on where you are and so on. It's economies of scale. Do you see? But who has time to think like that? When you're scrolling through Facebook and you see people posting, well, we're on this next trip, and he brought me flowers that time. And I just look so happy. Did you tell them about the scare you just had when you went to the doctor? For the life of me, right? I went to the doctor for a mammogram in last November. It was the scariest visit I have ever had to a doctor. That is, normally I'm walking into a doctor's office like boss life, like so confident that I know the outcome. This one time, I was like, Jesus, hallelujah, I am praying. When they were doing the imagery of my breast, they did a 3D imagery. They had to say, ma'am, turn this, because I want to see for myself. I don't want the technician to tell me your doctor will be in touch with you in 24 hours. I don't want that. I was looking for myself because I'm commanding that imagery better line up with how I feel. I feel great all the time. It better be. You see where I'm coming from? When I came out, I went in my car and I was like, thank you, Jesus. I kid you not. I went and bought chocolate. Oh man, that's when I started this fetish with the ice cream cone thing and the chocolate. Man, I went and I was like, it's time for us to have a chai latte and we're just gonna go get that. And I went and I bought brownies. I kid you not. Then the next day I went shopping. That was how I coped with it. And I know you're all looking at me like, oh, finally someone tells the truth. How many of you, when you encounter a traumatic situation, you go home and pour yourself a drink? Just raise your hand. It's okay. I'm not joining you. I'm just looking at you like, I want you to raise your hand because no one else is seeing you, so it's okay. Right? How many people do that? Now, drink is not my thing, but chocolate definitely is. Brownies every day, all day. When something happens, and I have experienced a trauma, my children know my routine. I head to the mall and I go to Haagen-Dazs. And I have that thing, the midnight cookie thingy where I don't take it with the whipped cream, but they crunch the cookies with some kind of ice cream thing. And the whole chocolate effect is just like, oh, that's my thing. So the minute something is going on, the kids are like, oh, so you're headed to the mall? Stop at Haagen-Dazs and treat yourself. That's just me. No shame in your game, buddy. Right? How many of you have a smoke when something happens? How many? How many of you go and do some hard stuff and say, man, maybe I got to cope somehow? How many? Just be honest with yourselves. You know what you're doing? You're still here. You're coping. Maybe it's not the best coping mechanism because some of these behaviors are addictive. And if you have an addictive complex, perhaps introducing other addictive substances is not a good idea. But you're coping. Some people, when people choose to off themselves, what happens is, guess what? They have run out of ways to cope. I can't say enough about this stuff. I want to wrap this up so quickly. My time is running out. And I want to wrap this up and bring this to a close. But for some reason, you guys are pulling stuff out of me. And I just feel like I need to just go one step deeper. Who ready? Who is ready? I just feel like there's just somebody out there who needs real help. I want you to just accept that we're human and that you're human. And that there is this point where your humanity intersects with your divinity. We've all been there. Have you thrown stuff? Who does that? I need a punching bag in my basement. I need to get that. I'm serious because when stuff goes, you have to be able to let it go. And in today's world, confessing that you let it go, people start sending mental health people to you and all kinds of stuff who are overdriven and overzealous. You see where I'm coming from? So there needs to be some balance in the atmosphere because people have different ways of coping with loss, whatever that loss is manufactured as. Losses are manufactured in different ways, right? It could be job loss, situational loss, loss of income, loss of home, retirement, right? People leaving your life. Somebody whom you put your faith in, they're going to walk out, loss of your business. They come and tell you you can't pay the rent anymore. They can't carry you anymore. The bank says it can't carry you anymore. You've done everything you could to save the business. And now you have to accept that this business is not savable. And now you have to move on to your next. That's why you need folks like me. We speak life into you, right? Teach you to cope. Starting over. Have you ever had this? I've started over so many times. I can't even write the book anymore. I need to take a bullhorn and just plaster it across my head. I have started over so many times. After a while, you're just like, girl, please. That certain things don't faze me anymore. People threatening to do stuff or whatever. I'm like, pick your best shot. I'm like, excuse me, if you think that's going to move me, pick your best shot. And it amazes people sometimes because they think you can't live without them. And you are like, this is me. Really? Don't tempt me. I might cry. You won't see my tears. But you rest assured, the life in me, that life force is strong and it's holding on for everything I've got. How do you get to that life force? You have to tap into something greater than yourself. Let's face it, we cut ourselves off from going to church because we feel like we don't need that anymore. God is definitely not working through that man or that woman, and those preachers are bad. That's what we tell ourselves. So we cut ourselves off from a community of support. And most importantly, we don't tap in to the divine. And not tapping into that life force is what is robbing us of this life force. Sometimes we got to get to a place where you tap into something greater than yourself. Are you hearing me? You have to find that mix, that thing that defines you, that thing that is greater than you, and tap into it. Just like Big Sean said, he had to get a spiritual therapist. He got a therapist, but he also got a spiritual guru. He had to find one to teach him how to tap in. You know why you come to me every day? I am your spiritual guru. That's what you're tapping into. You're tapping into me to keep you going. You thought at first, well, I kind of like how she looks. I like how she sounds. I like what she thinks about stuff. But it's been 3 months. Some of you have been following me for years. It's been 3 months and you're still here. Because you're tapping in. We all need. So when I am done, I go tap in too. You think, because to come back to you and to absorb your stuff, right? And to be able to be fresh to you, I gotta go tap in. So when I ask you to do certain things, do it. It's gonna help you. It's gonna help you. It builds you up, right? It helps you. It builds you up. So here's what I want you to do. Everybody, everyone, listen, everybody, right now, under the sound of my voice, here's what I want you to do. I want you to pick up the phone and call people whom you have not heard from or talked to in a while. People who's nothing went wrong in it. You just kind of just let it slide. Check in on people. I want you to cultivate relationships that are meaningful. Develop around you people who are doing something, people who are like-minded like you. That sometimes is what you need. That's your life force. People who are constantly striving. I have a friend named Elaine, constantly striving, constantly doing stuff. Tap into her, right? Make sure you have identify your support system, right? Get that going. Get that going immediately. Reduce your exposure to trauma as much as possible. So those folks in your lives who are likely to act out and become violent, they go into a place and they don't like it. Reduce your exposure to trauma, right? Get a news app on your phone so you can see it when it's happening, so you can avoid watching it on TV. For God's sake, stop watching the mass shooting stuff. Stop watching the shooting on the east side of Detroit. It's always on Detroit's east side. Why they pick on Detroit's east side, I don't know. Like stuff don't happen in Farmington. Stuff don't happen in Bloomfield Hills. Stuff happens everywhere, but it's Detroit's east side. In the community where you live, it might be the south side. It might be the north side. It might be the west side. Right? And I want all of us to start praying. Yes, go back to prayer. The Bible says, by prayer and supplication, make your request known. Speak it. Stop the foolishness. Stop listening to all these people telling you, we all need a spiritual person. We need a spiritual connection that is positive and affirming. You don't need anybody beating you down and reminding you of the 1 million times you made a mistake. And so what? If Jesus said he's going to forgive us 70 times 7 in one day, then far be it from you, Mr. Person, to start telling people that they're such a bad person, right? So get yourself together. Go get a Bible somewhere. You remember the old duster one? You probably have pushed it away and said it doesn't work anymore. And start identifying what works for you. You know, for me, one of the most cleansing things that happen is I tune into music. Music helps me, whatever the music is. Sometimes I'm on fire for the gangster rap. I like to hear the bass and I'm like, this moves me. And then there's another time when I just want R&B. I barely listen to R&B. It doesn't move me much. It's too mournful. Sometimes I like listening to country because it's full of jokes for me. It's telling a story. It's kind of folk songy. It's folksy, right? And then I tune into inspirational music, whether I like Christian rock and I like gospel. And I pray. And sometimes I expect too much when I pray. I expect my prayer to be answered immediately and manifestation to take place. That rarely ever happens. I'm just going to be honest with you. But what it does is it brings you clarity. You understand? It makes something clearer over time. Because in the midst of confusion, who the hell has time to pray? That's what the first thing you're saying. Who has time around here? You've got to make the time right where you're standing. So join with me in prayer. I pray. And I am telling you that I pray because I need to. The older I get is the more I realize you are doing yourself a disservice without not tapping into your spiritual parts. Right? Do you see where I'm coming from? We've got to get to that point. We have to get back into it, right? Get back into it. That is what I want you to do. Oh, you write your own prayers. Good for you, Dr. James. Right? And get a journal. Anybody? Just get a little notebook. It could look like anything. Can you just write out how you feel, especially when something traumatic happens to you? None of us like that feeling when you go to work and they send for you. Ever happened to you? First time it happened to me, I'm like, I don't like this feeling. Nobody's ever going to do that to me again. Right? I don't like the feeling of having a nervous stomach on my way to work. Do you understand what I'm saying? So I work for myself because I didn't like the feeling. I thought over time it was going to make me have a health condition. And that's what happened to a lot of us. So you have to talk yourself and build yourself up to go in and face this foolishness day after day because you need it for your health insurance, for your sick child, for your spouse. Some of you are taking care of sick spouses. Your spouse is at home and you are their rock and their everything. Who is your rock? Who do you go to? Because your spouse is sitting there wondering the same thing. I am so dependent on him. I'm so dependent on her. But who is she talking to? Who does she go to? Some of you need to develop a closer relationship with your significant others. Yeah, you need to open up. You need to tell them what happened to you. They're wondering why you are the way you are. Tell them what happened to you. Tell them what happened. Because it's there. That's what's contributing to your trauma. Some people in relationships are so violent and you found a spouse who is staying with you. You need to tell them why you're violent. Tell them what happened in your childhood. I mean, you don't have to let all the secrets out because some of them are real scary. Or you write your own music, right? But you need to tell. Dr. Simpson put up his Dropbox site, so go click on it, see what happens, right? But you need to tell people what happens, right? And I kid you not. I kid you not. All of us have been there. We all need someone to talk to. Talk to your people. Recently, a friend of mine had moved out of state and something bad happened to him. And we're in like different time zones now. So he's like 3 hours behind me. And something happened to him. And he called me and we talked. He was having a real moment. You got to understand, this guy is strong like a rock. He's invincible in my book. He has talked me off the ledge so many times. And I could not believe when he called me. I didn't judge him. I just listened. What he did was hell of a wrong in many ways. I think he knew that. He knew I was going to say that, but I listened to him. He wanted clarity. Once I gave him the clarity, he was good. It's the kind of friendship where we don't talk every day, but when something is happening, you pick up the phone, that person is there for you. Everybody needs somebody. Find someone like that. And if you have them, keep in touch. Right? Life is fragile. Life is a lot more fragile than we want to accept. Do you know that? Life is a lot more fragile than we want to accept. We see ourselves as being big and invincible. I told you yesterday that in my story, I'm vertically challenged. Some people think, but I think I'm tall. I'm 5 feet 3 inches. Don't you think that's tall? I think that's pretty tall. That's a tall person. But some people think I'm vertically challenged. So I wear 6-inch heels. So I feel invincible, all conquering. Even the strongest of us are faced with issues. Okay? Even the strongest of us. So go over to Facebook. Go and get yourself on Twitter. Find your spiritual person and tap in. I gotta go. Time is running out. Make sure you go to my website, theexodusfoundation.com. Be a blessing to us. As usual, go to harrietkemmick.com. Make sure you tap in to what we're saying and be a blessing to us at theexodusfoundation.com. This is what I do. I talk to people and then I provide services to victims of human sex trafficking. Make sure you tap into what we have to say. Thank you so much for being a part of our experience today. Today is Tuesday, all day. And tomorrow will be Wednesday. Join us again as we continue to talk about what matters and we continue to help others who need a voice. Thank you so much, everybody. Be blessed.